Once upon a time, a very long time ago, long before Captain Cook, way long before Captain Cook. Why, so long ago that we don't know all the details of how life was at that time. But I'm going to tell you a story. Now, this story can be found in the collection of William Westervelt. But for some reason, he told it, making it sound like a European story. So I'm going to give you a more Hawaiian version tonight. So at this time, on this island, this big island that we're on right now, in the Huna district, there was a chief. And to make it simple, nobody remembers his name, so I'm going to give some names to the characters. We'll just call him, to make it simple, we'll call him Kahili. Well, Chief Kahili was a wise chief and a good chief. He ruled most of the Huna area. And as he got older and older and older, he began, nobody knew why, to get sicker and sicker and sicker. Nobody could do anything to help him. They brought in people and gave him loaming. They brought in herbalists and gave him the best herbs. They brought in psychics that they had at that time to try and look. Finally, they called upon the most important kahuna of all time, we'll call him Kahuna Nui. And he came down, and he looked at him and he said, there's only one thing I can say to the chief. That's the water of Kane. I have to give you a little aside. In lots of Hawaiian legends, there's this idea of the water of Kane. Kane in the very ancient times was a god of nature, but a god of the high places, the highest places, and a god of where the rain came from. And so Kane was considered to live in the tops of the mountains, where the mist was and the clouds was, and somewhere up there he had his land, and that's where all the fresh water came from. But the water of Kane does not just mean the fresh water, it was also like the water of life. It was a healing water. And it healed not just the body, but the mind and circumstances, and it was a wonderful thing, but extremely hard to find. There's still some chants today that talk about where is the water of Kane? It's a kind of a question-response chant, very long, about it's here, it's there, where is it really? Well, this Kahuna Nui said, when they said, well, how can we find the water of Kane? Nobody knows where it is. Well, he said, that I can tell you, but I can't tell you how to get there. The water of Kane can be found at the top of Mauna Kea, at the lake that's called Waiau. And then he left. Well, the king's dying. Now the king, I didn't mention, the chief. The chief had 3 sons. And each one of the sons was very, very different. But they wanted to go and find the water of Kane. It was dangerous. They knew it was dangerous. They didn't know exactly where to find it, but they had to go find the water of Kane, find a way to get up there. Now, I said this is a very long time ago. These islands had far more forest than you see today. The tops of the mountains were all covered. It was not just a climb up a bare mountain in those days. Okay? So it was a very tricky place. There was a lot of mist, gullies, and ravines. It was still that. It's still tricky. Okay? But now we have roads and trails. And up there in the mountains, they didn't have that. In the old days, the Hawaiians lived only on the coastline. The interior was thought to be inhabited by ghosts and by dangerous spirits and by a people called the Nawao, which means the wild ones. So anyway, it was quite an undertaking. So each of the children wanted to do it. And the eldest finally kept after his father, I'll do it, I really want to do it, I want to bring you this water. Finally the father granted him permission, so he took his father's calabash, went off. Now the thing, his name, by the way, was Kea Maka. And he was a very selfish person. Because he knew in his mind he didn't want to get the water just for his father, but he wanted to be the one to do something that would fill his father with pride so that he would be chosen as the next chief. Now you got to understand a little bit of Hawaiian culture here. In the ancient times, actually even in the monarchy, a lot of people don't realize this, but from the most ancient times, they did not have a right of succession to become a chief that came from being the eldest, or that came from being of the right family, or in a particular relationship. They didn't do that. The only right of succession came when the chief, or in later times the king, named someone. And he could name anyone he wanted, or was a queen, anyone she wanted. And if they didn't name someone, then in the most ancient times, a council of other chiefs had to get together and elect somebody, or in the modern times, it was the council of nobles had to get together and elect somebody. They had to do that twice in the modern history. But in the very ancient times, somebody had to be named. And so the eldest wanted to be the one who was named, and he thought if he could get this water of Kane and he could bring it back, and his father was healed, then he'd be the one definitely to be the next chief. So off he went. And he left Kone, went through Hilo district, and he was on his way up in the Hamakua area, looking for a way in to find his way up. And on the trail, while he was going through the woods on the trail, there was a really ugly little man. And the man stepped out on the trail and he said, "Where are you going? Such in a rush." And the elder said, "Get out of my way, ugly little man." And he brushed him aside and went on. But as he went on and started to struggle up the mountain, suddenly he was even worse. It was even more difficult than it was before. And he fell over, tree branches fell down, and roots grabbed his legs, and gullies seemed to open up out of nowhere. And finally, as he was trying to climb over something, a big tree came down, smashed right up on top of him. And sad to say, all fairy tales aren't happy ones. He died. Went to the land of dead spirits. So they waited back in Pune, waited a long time, waited, because they knew it was going to be a long trip. Finally, he never came back. And the second son came up. Excuse me. His name was Hili Peao. And he went out to get his father to give him permission. So he got the calabash. He went. And he went on up through Huna and up through Hilo district and into Aomakua and looking for a way up. And he's going along the trail and he meets this really ugly little man on the trail. He says, "Where are you going in such a rush?" He says, "Ugly little man, I don't have time for you. I have more important things to do than talk to you. Out of my way." And on he rushed. Wow. By now you can probably guess what happened. Tree branches fell down, the roots grabbed at his feet, gullies opened up. And the more he struggled, the worse it got, until finally the gully opened up where he didn't think was one, very deep, and he fell down to his death and ended up in the land of spirits. So finally, it was time. They waited again a very long time. And finally, the youngest one, whose name was Mauna Kea, he went to his father. And his father really didn't, but he knew he was dying, so he, one last chance, my last son. But if I die, what's going to happen anyway? So the son takes the calabash and goes off into the woods. And he goes same route, Hilo, Hamakua, up the mountain, sees the little old ugly man on the trail. The man says, "Where are you going in such a rush?" He says, "Oh, kind sir," he says, "I'm looking for the water of Kane because my father is ill." And he's the only one who wasn't thinking of what it'll do for me. And so he said, "You seem to live in this area. Do you know where the path is?" And at that moment, this ugly little man turned to a kind of a mist and became the spirit of a beautiful woman, an akua. Now this was long, long before Kelly, but her name was Lily Noi. And she was the spirit of the mountain itself. And she said, "Because you have a good heart, because you're doing this, and because you were kind enough to honor me, a stranger, here's the path." She told him how to get there. She was not the kind of a who would lift him up and take him. Okay? Still had to go through the hard work of getting there. But she gave him the trail. What she did do, however, was very important because none of the tree branches fell down, none of the roots tried to grab his feet, there were no gullies that opened up suddenly before him. The path wasn't easy, but then it wasn't impossible. So after a long, long time and storm, he finally got up to the top of Mauna Kea. What they have today, there are two main cinder cones up there. One today is called Pu'ulilinohi. And the other cinder cone is called Pu'upoliahu. And then in between those, just a little off, is a lake called Waiau. And the water from that lake is considered, even in the ancient times, very, very sacred, even in more modern times. Not now. But in more modern times, very sacred and healing water. And that was the water of Kane in that lake. So he gets his calabash full. Now on his way, he's coming back down, and he meets Lilinoe again. She's down somewhere on the flank of the mountain as he's coming back. And he said, "Oh, Spirit," he said, "since you know so much about this, and you are spirit, and you know about the land, and you know about the world of spirit as well," he said, "what happened to my brothers?" And she said, "Oh, well, you know, they were selfish and they were greedy and they died. They're in the land of spirit now." He says, "Oh," he says, I can't go back without my brothers. I want to bring them back." And she said, "I really don't recommend it." And he said, "No, they're my brothers and my family. I have to do this." So she guided him this time through into the realm of the spirits of the dead. And there they were, very unhappy, eating moths. That's all they had to eat, the spirit of the dead. Dead land. And so he sprinkled a little bit of the water of Kane on them. And they came back to life. And then very happily, he thought, because they were happy to be alive, and they came back down. Well, while they were still coming down in the Hilo district, it was a long trail, so they had to sort of like camp out overnight. So while they camped, and while Loko Maikai was sleeping, the brothers came up, and they hit him on the head with a rock, tied him up, took the calabash, and came all the way back down and back to the king, to the chief rather. And so as they came back to the chief, then they had a fight between them. The eldest won, and he brought the calabash to the chief. And he said, "Here, Father, here is the water of Kane that will heal you." And the chief says, "Oh, thank goodness." And he takes a big sip and spits it out. And he says, "What is this?" And it had turned to salt water. He said, chased him away, cast him out, and, sent him away from the home and from the village, from the people and everything. Banished him. There it is, there's the word for it. So the younger boy said, "Okay, well, I know what happened because I kept some of this for myself in my own calabash. Here, Father, here's the real water of Kane." And the father said, "All right, thank goodness." And he takes it, spits it out. "This is swamp water. What are you trying to do to me? You're trying to kill me." Banishes the second son. Finally, here comes the third son. Now you see, meanwhile, while all of this was going on, Lilinoe, of course, the spirit of the mountain, came down, saw what happened. And she was such a kind spirit that she never even said, "I told you so." She was goodness personified. So what she did was she brought him another calabash of the water of life and helped him on his way so that when he got back down, back to the chief, and he gave him his father, "Here's the water of Kane, Father." Because his heart was pure, the water was pure. And because the chief was also good in his heart, he drank the water and survived, revived, became very healthy, decided he wanted to spend the rest of his life in retirement, and named his son the chief, and he went off and spent the rest of his time fishing. All right. What we have here is some typical things in Hawaiian stories, just to know. If you want to know more about a story, if you're reading legends, it's not enough just to know the legend itself, but you get the real information coming from the place names and especially from the names of the characters in the story. Now, in this story that we did, I just gave the name Kahili to a chief. That's simply Kahili means chief, okay, or noble. And the first one, Gama, means selfish. Now, this would be typical in a regular story, too. You would have names that would represent some quality or something important in the story. The second son's name was Hili. That means greedy. And the third son's name, Mauna Kea, means good-hearted. So, if we were listening to a much more well-known tale, pay attention. Get a dictionary. Pay attention to the names of the characters and the names of the places, and they'll enrich the story tremendously. Well, the story is about healing with the water of Kane. Now, the older sons in the story thought that the water of Kane was something like a medicine that anybody could take and get good effects no matter what it was. The way a lot of medicine is given out today. But it wasn't. It was a spiritual thing. It was water, yes, but it was water that had a special quality, not only of its own, but a quality that it gained and got enhanced by the people who used it. So now, when we're talking about healing today, I get lots of emails and lots of people talking to me about healing energy. And, oh yes, they want to find this device that will make healing energy, or they want to get this product or this other thing that will have healing energy. They want to, somehow somebody wants to find in themselves, they want to gather healing energy. We have to understand something. If we want to develop our powers and abilities to heal, we've got to understand a few things about health and healing. First of all, there's no such thing as healing energy. Energy of almost any kind, in the right amount, the right intensity, under the right circumstances, can have healing effects. This is why you can take even something of, let's say, an extremely serious disease like cancer, has been healed with surgery. Because what they're doing there, they're changing the patterns of the energy of the body. Natural energy of the body can function better. But anyway, it's been healed by surgery. It's been healed by chemotherapy. It's been healed by radiation and combinations. It's been healed by hypnotherapy. It's been healed by prayer. It's been healed by apricot kernels. It's been healed by change of lifestyle. It's been healed by massage. It's been healed by laying on of hands. It's been healed by placebos. Well, and I can name a lot more. This is all very interesting. If the same type of disease, when we're talking about other diseases, even more so, but the same type of disease can be, and these are all on record, don't just take my word for it, you can look them up. If the same type of disease can be healed by so many methods, it's not the methods that are doing healing. The methods are somehow helping the healing, but they are not the source of the healing. Otherwise, we would have solved that problem a long time ago. This works, apply this all the time, and you get the effects. Squirt some oil on the engine, doesn't matter what kind of engine it is, anywhere in the world, squirt the right oil on the engine, and it works better. Humans don't seem to operate that way. There's no quick fix that works for every human being in every culture. Well, yeah, actually there is. But it's not an external thing. The most important thing to understand about healing is it always comes from inside. It comes from what we call the Hili. It's the individual person who has the healing power, the actual healing power. What you can develop if you want to help people is that's just that, the ability to help them heal. There are all kinds of ways, and I'll give you some here. There are all kinds of ways to help that happen, but it's not a particular distinctive type of energy that produces healing. Because like I said, even magnetism and electricity have been used to heal. It is energy is required, that's important. But see, we have that energy within ourselves all the time, at any time. What we have to do is do something to allow the body the freedom to use that energy to heal itself. Whenever you get sick or get an injury, the very first thing your body does is immediately start a healing process to the best of its ability. It's immediate. It's so immediate that I wrote a book called Instant Healing, because if you can find the way, I'll tell you the secret, comes from Hawaiian culture in a moment, but if you can find the way to allow the body to heal, to get the stuff out of the way that's stopping that, the body will heal in no time. Instantly, wham bang, just like that. In no time at all. Broken bones. Well, to make it easier on people's understanding and acceptance, I've said that instant healing means healing in less than an hour. I see it happen in less than a minute, very, very often. But I'd say sometimes there are lots of things that have to be done so that it can be in that time. So, if we have, from Hawaiian ideas, these two important concepts, then developing our power to heal and help others is going to be far, far easier. Let's name the two concepts. One of the concepts is, in the Hawaiian, the word for health is ola. So we mentioned that earlier on. Ola. Now, ola is a very interesting word because it has within its roots connotations of movement. So, health and healing are vitally involved with movement. You can think of movement of energy, or movement of muscles, or movement of something. There's got to be movement. That's life. If it moves, it's alive. Okay? Or more alive than those things that don't seem to move, as far as we know. So movement, this is a Hawaiian concept. And so all of the Hawaiian healing techniques, whether we're talking about lomi and herbs and some of even working with dreams and all the other kinds of things they use, all have to do with inducing movement. So that's part of it, getting something to move. The second part of it is also just as important. And we take this from the Hawaiian. The general word for illness in Hawaiian is ma'i. And if we take that in its roots, it means a state of great tension. From this point of view, all illnesses, we could say all problems, but let's just stick to health right now. All illness is fundamentally a tension problem. We could call it a stress problem, but it's fundamentally a tension problem. The idea of stress is vastly misunderstood, so I think I'm going to share something else from one of our workshops with you tonight. Everybody will get to see this. What I'd like you to do tonight is put your hands together like this. Okay? Good. Okay? Now, push with your right hand. One or two of you understood. I wasn't pushing, by the way, I've just got my hands up here as a model. If you're pushing with your right hand, it goes like that. What 99% of you did was what 99% of the population does. You push back with your left. Now, if there's stress from the outside world, or sometimes from inside the body, depending on what you eat, if there's stress from, let's call it outside, that's not the stress that does you harm. It's the pushing back that creates the tension that produces the illness or the problems or the dysfunction. This is why when you have areas, sometimes places with high electromagnetic overhead wires and things like that, that can be very stressful for some people, meaning that for whatever reason they stress back, they resist it. But in those kinds of places, this can have to do with almost anything, not everyone is effective. Let's say, look at here, we have the Kona winds, that's a good one. There's a lot of people get sick when the Kona winds are blowing. Get all stressed out, and some gets headaches, and some people get very, very ill because they're resisting the positive ions. About half the populace, we can do this almost like a bell curve if we want to, about 25% gets ill in the Kona winds or in other kinds of high stress things. About 50% isn't bothered at all. And about 25% gets higher. Okay. Now, when you have something that's seriously detrimental to human beings, like radiation of some kind, you're still going to have, it's almost a different kind of bell curve, but you're still going to have a percentage of people who will not be affected or not be affected anywhere near as badly as everybody else. Another big range of people who are affected more, and then a range of people who almost instantly die. And that has to do with the level of tension that's within people at any given time. So we talk about microbes, we talk about bacteria, we talk about viruses, fine. But there's all kinds of people who are not affected by them. All kinds of people who heal themselves of those effects, and other people who get devastatingly ill. From this point of view that I'm giving you, it has to do with the level of tension that you're under when you have the problem, or the level of tension that you have against the problem, whatever it might be. An awful lot of illness doesn't come from bugs. It comes from other people, and I don't mean the bugs that jump off them, okay? It becomes because we resist the behavior of other people, and when we do that a lot, then our body has so much tension that the functions break down. So an awful lot of illness is strongly related, not caused by, but strongly related to how we feel about other people, how we feel about things in our life. And the more things we resist, the more tension we build up. And the less time we take to relieve that tension, depending on the person, by going fishing or by doing anything else that's enjoyable, or by admiring beauty, or by just doing a relaxation exercise, whatever it is. The less we do that, the more susceptible we are to things that build up and create more stress that we resist. Now, there's a lot of things we naturally resist. There are things that we have allergic reactions to. What I found in my experience, so I'll just put this out, is that the more tension a person already has, the more any additional stress puts them over the edge. So if you're out there and you're under high stress because you're angry about your work, you're angry about life, you don't like, you're mad at the kids, or whatever it may be, and you're in an area where there's lots of pollen, you're more likely to have that reaction to it, because you're already under so much tension. A little bit of more tension throws you over the edge of your goals. Over and over again, we've been able to help people relieve that tension. There are just so many ways, doesn't matter which one you use. Relieve the tension, relax more, and all of those symptoms of allergies disappear. We have other kinds of things we use where when people have injured themselves, let's say burns, hit with a hammer, injury, cut, things like that. There's something you can do that if you will do it right away, you'll have no injury, no black and blue, you'll have instant healing. In fact, I'll share this one with you. It's called the mind blower technique. Okay. Give you a little bit of an example of it so you know what we're talking about. Easier to tell you what some people have done, so I'll share some stories that I've already written about. But in one case, a man was building a fence. This was after he took the course where we taught this technique. So he's building a fence, and he's got a hammer, and in from the hammer. And he's hammering the nails to build the fence, and bam! Hit his thumb. Now, the traditional technique, when that happens, is to drop the hammer, grab your thumb, and jump up and down and yell about it. Okay? That actually has some tension relieving effect, believe it or not. Much better is what he learned, because what he did, which would look very strange to anyone else, he immediately stopped, he remembered the course, he took the hammer and he moved it toward his thumb in exactly the same pattern as when he hit the nail. Now, it's a very important part of this technique. Don't touch the thumb. Okay? But you move the hammer in the same pattern without quite touching the thumb. And over and over and over again. In this particular case, he did that 15 times. That's all he did. And then the first thing that disappears is the pain. And then the next thing that happens, if you do it soon enough, not only is there no pain, but there's no black and blue, no bruise. And so anyway, when the pain went away, he kept on building the fence. At the end of building the fence, he looked at his hand, he couldn't tell anything had happened. That was a solid smack to the head. Another case with a woman, and she had very sensitive skin. And one of her big problems was she was very frequently burning herself on hot stuff. Well, she again took the course, but this is what she learned. The same kind of thing. So she was reaching up for a pot of hot water, and instead of hitting the handle, she missed the handle. There had to be a little bit of inherent clumsiness in there, which is probably why she got burned a lot. But anyway, she touched the pot itself instead, and usually this would have produced immediate blisters, pain, redness, and all that. She touched it, realized what she'd done, felt that initial flash of pain, and did the same movement toward the pot without quite touching it again, over and over and over again. I don't know how many times. And when she finished, she looked at her hand. There was no blister, there was no pain. There was this very slightest trace of redness that quickly disappeared. This has been done with cuts, and then two cases I know of broken bones, and so many things. Oh my, what's happening? What's happening is, nobody's doing extra energy, nobody's giving a medicine, nobody's doing a treatment of any kind, but it's using the natural way that the body works. Now, in this particular case, what's happening? Let's examine it. The thing that's happening is, you are doing the same pattern. You are creating, in a sense, a new memory for the body. And so now it's as if you're doing this and the body is saying, oh, I thought that hammer hit me. I guess it didn't. And if you can keep your mind in the present moment, I'll tell you how we do that too in a moment, but if you can keep your mind in the present moment, not bringing up the memory of being hit, which causes a lot more stress from inside. But if you can do that, the body will relax. And when the body relaxes, the circulation increases. The moment you get tensed up, your circulation increases. The circulation increases. All those healing elements that are part of the natural healing process start to take place, and everything gets repaired. And it does it so fast, it makes your head spin. Actually, it doesn't make your head spin because you're feeling better, but it would make somebody else's head spin who was watching. The body knows how to heal itself. What gets in the way of the body healing itself is excessive tension. It's got the abilities. So whatever technique you use, this is one spectacular one, but whatever technique you're using, find a way to relieve tension as quickly as possible. Sometimes it's doing something physical like this. Sometimes it's changing your mind about somebody. And your body, to the degree that it relaxes, you'll start the healing process on its own. And it doesn't take a special energy. It takes energy. It doesn't, because all that energy is blocked up with the tension. You release the tension, there's a lot of energy released too. But it's your own natural energy. If you can have some things that have their own energy, some people like to use crystals, some people like to go to special places. Those are fine. They don't do the healing, but they can augment it. Speed it up a little bit more. It's the stuff inside you that's doing the healing. I said I mentioned what we do. This process that I'm teaching you now, it's very important that you keep your mind in the present moment. So one of the things we do is teach, because of the experience of the woman, share her experience and what she did. It would be easier. She was water skiing with a friend. And so as they were water skiing, there were a few little waves. The friend's water ski got tipped under a wave. He went flying, and the water ski came down and hit him right smack on the forehead. Opened a gash, he was bleeding profusely, and in the water. The girl, the woman, leaped off her ski, swam over to him. Now he couldn't do anything because he was dazed. She held him up out of the water, and she decided to try this. Based on what I've already told you, she brought her hand down like the ski toward his forehead. And then to emphasize it, she shouted at him because he was dazed and not able to pay attention. She shouted at him, "Nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened." And finally, another boat came and they were able to bring him to shore. And when they got him to shore and they wiped off his forehead, there was no cut. It sealed and healed on its own. The body will do that. It's amazing. Watch it happen. But it sealed and healed. By the time he was at shore, there was no injury. And so we started experimenting with what she had done, and we found that you could say anything you want, but it was a fantastic way to keep your mind off the injury, off of what happened. Because we find that's the thing that keeps adding attention, and bringing it back. Oh, that was terrible. Oh, when I hit my head. Oh, that was awful. You're adding to the problem. So the more you can keep in the present moment with that, create a new type of memory. This works well for injuries, not for everything. Why? Well, healing happens fast. The sooner you can forgive somebody, you'd be amazed how healthy you get. The sooner you can change your mind about something you don't like, all this tension eases up and you start to feel it. I remember one case of a Japanese monk. He had cancer. And he was smart enough to know what to do. He had somebody be with him. He was very weak. He had somebody sit with him in a garden, downwind of the flowers. And he spent hours every day doing nothing but being with the flowers, smelling their perfume. That's all they do every day. So I remember the story correctly, in 3 weeks, his cancer was gone. It wasn't the flower energy that did it. He put himself purposefully into a state of peace and presence. And let that beautiful environment help him relax, relax, relax. He wasn't thinking about his problems or the things he didn't like, or memories or anything. Totally in the present moment, in that peaceful setting, his body relaxed to the point where it could heal himself. This is why sometimes in a situation like that serious change of lifestyle can produce healing. You get out of a situation where you've been stressing against so strongly in a totally new situation with not the same stuff around, your body begins to relax, and as it begins to relax, it begins to heal. So you develop your power to heal by developing your power to relax. You can do the increasing of energy, deep breathing or whatever other means you want to do to help increase a sense and feeling of energy, good environment, whatever that takes. Sometimes even physical activity for some people. But that relaxation effect, whether you have to change your mind, change your body, change your circumstances, change your behavior, however you get to that, that's where the power of healing then comes into play. And to the degree you can help other people do that, you're helping them to heal. Okay. Do I have any questions? Okay, that's fine. Well, then what we do at this particular point is if questions come up, fine. But at this point, we open it up to questions in general. We can have questions about Hawaiian culture, about this Huna philosophy. Let me give you a rundown of the philosophy so you know what it's based on. First of all, we have 7 principles. Come from Hawaiian ideas. But, I wanted to teach this to the modern world, so I translated these Hawaiian ideas into English words. We now have them in, 22 different languages, so we have them on the internet for people to free download. But the basic first principle is the idea that the world is what you think it is. Now, we can look at that in a lot of different ways, but one of the primary things is that means that if you change what you think the world is, you can change yourself and change your life. Second one is we say there are no limits. We make that very practical. Well, there's 2 ways. First of all, we're interacting with our environment all the time. The people in it and the physical environment and the invisible environment. There's always an interaction going on, both ways. So we're connected to everything in some way or another. But also it means anything is possible if you can figure out how to do it. That's the only catch. It's an infinite universe, is what this says. In an infinite universe, anything is possible, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any given moment you have the knowledge to do infinite things. But the potential is there. So all we have to do is figure out how to do it. Which gives us tremendous hope and possibility and inventiveness. We say that energy flows where attention goes. That's the third one. Wherever you put your attention, energy moves. It's your energy, the energy around you, even the energy of other people. If you have a project and you put a lot of energy into that project, you're going to attract people into that project. If you actually just meditate on a particular part of your body, you're going to increase the circulation to that part of your body. That part of your body is going to get warmer, measurably. And because it's increasing the circulation, just a pure, very passive kind of meditation on a part of your body that's hurting or that's sick is going to help to heal it. The attention will help to relax it, and the circulation it increases because energy flows where attention goes. That's going to help to heal it. If you don't do anything else, it may take a while, but still, the process works because we put our attention, energy flows. Now, the fourth one says, now is the moment of power. right here and now. Nothing from the past has any power over you. It does not exist anymore. I know people have this big thing about the past. Oh, but this happened, and this happened, and this happened. Folks, you cannot get burned by yesterday's sun. And you cannot get wet by tomorrow's rain. It doesn't have any real existence anymore. Your memories do. See, here's one of the biggest secrets I can give you. Your memories exist now. They've got nothing to do with the past. They're like these books that you've written that you keep looking at and reading. They exist now. Now is the moment of power. Now is when you can begin to change things. We say that, based on the word aloha, to love is to be happy with. Now this is a direct translation from the very word aloha, from the roots. To love is to be happy with. Love is not pain or jealousy or flutters in the stomach. All those are fear things, anger things. Love is when you're feeling good about someone or something. That's the love part. And when we're honest, we don't always have aloha for everyone in our life at every moment. The beauty of the teaching is, when we realize we don't, we have some place to go back to bring it back again. That's what the idea is. Not to be constantly loving all the time. That's not impossible. But it means having absolutely no rules about anything. Okay, there are people who seek that. Fine, I don't have any problem with them. I have some rules I'm not going to give up. But most of my relationships, I've learned how, if I can't be loving every time, all the time, I learn how to get to that space more often than not. And that's the most important part. Okay? That we have a place to go to, thing to do. That's how love is looked at. Then we say that all power comes from within. See, but it doesn't all come from within just you. All power comes from within everything. So let's suppose you have an awful lot of energy. You lay hands on people and they have healing effects. That's wonderful. It's not going to work with everybody. It can work with a lot of people. It won't work with everybody. Then you think, I'm losing my power. Well, you never had that kind of power in the first place. You had the power to help. The moment you start thinking, like the greedy guy and the selfish guy, that it's all coming from you, that's when it starts to go down. Because then you're afraid it's not going to work. Or you're afraid if it doesn't work perfectly every time, I'm losing it, what's happening? Then you get mad, and you build up more tension, and you lose more of it. Power is within everything, and we can help bring out that power. We can help bring out that power within ourselves as well. And finally, we say, this one produces the most problem with people, effectiveness is the measure of truth. That comes from the word pona. Pona has a lot of meanings. It has to do with effectiveness, because it means results, but it also means that which is correct, that which is good. The fundamental meaning of goodness. But effectiveness, which means good results, is the measure of truth. In this way, there's a beautiful Hawaiian proverb, I don't remember it in Hawaiian, but the proverb itself is just perfect. Demonstrate your skill of surfing on a surfboard. Don't tell me you're a great surfer. You're a great surfer if you can surf. Its effectiveness is the measure of truth. Now, people can have all kinds of truth because the world is what you think it is. You can think anything is true. But this is just a measure, a practical measure. Believe me, indigenous people around the world are some of the most practical people you'll ever meet. So in this one, we're saying, for the practical purposes, effectiveness is a measure of truth.